Welcome back, everyone, to the Independence Public Library's Maker Monday. I'm, once again, Mr. Alex, and it's been a little bit since we've had a Maker Monday, so I wanted to make sure to make this one very extra special. So the project that I came up with for us to make today, I like to call a rubber band tube car. And as you can see, it's a car where the body is made out of a cardboard tube, either from a paper towel roll or just a craft tube that you can buy by themselves, with some round cardboard wheels connected with pencil axles and straws on the pencils to make sure that the wheels don't get too close or far away from the tube itself. Keep them about in the right spot. And on the inside, as you might be able to see, we've got a rubber band here attached to this side of, this pencil, and then on the other side attached to this paper clip over here. And so what that allows us to do is wind up the wheels in a certain way until it's very, very tight, and then let it go and let her rip. Just let her right away. And so if you want to make a really, really cool rubber band tube car like I've got here, here's what you're going to need. We're going to need a cardboard tube, of course, for the body of our car. And like I said, you can get this from an empty paper towel roll, or if you've already got craft tubes at home just to play around and make crafts, those work great as well. You're going to need straws, as well as pencils that we're going to use for the axles to connect the body to the wheels. And likewise, we're going to need cardboard that we can use to create the wheel itself. And on the inside, we're going to need, like I mentioned, rubber bands, which are going to be, that's the powerhouse. That's what makes this thing move. Rubber bands on the inside and paperclip for the end. Now, those are the materials that make up the car itself. We're also going to want to make sure we can keep it all together with a little glue. Goes a long way for some parts of the wheels. You're also going to want to make sure that you've got a ruler or something else on hand that you can use to measure the cardboard that you're about to cut. And of course, with cutting means that you're going to probably need some scissors. Make sure if you're using anything too sharp that you've got an adult with you that can supervise. But the cutting is not going to be too difficult, so I think you should be fairly safe as long as you use some safe scissors. And finally, you don't need these things, but I've found that if you've got sandpaper and maybe a single hand hole punch, it goes a long way towards making this easy. For the sandpaper, we've used that to sand down the wheels a bit, because the smoother they are, the further they'll roll. And for the hole punch, it just makes it a little bit easier when making holes inside the tube itself for the pencil. Otherwise, you're going to have to stick a pencil in there or poke it with something else. It doesn't have to be too sharp again, but it takes a little bit of effort. And with that, we've got all of the pieces ready, so let's get started on making this car. First up, let's start with the body. And as you can see right here, since we've got our tube, completely uncut, unmeasured, just a blank cardboard tube, the first thing that we need to do is figure out where we're going to put the holes in it for the pencil axles to go through so that we can put the wheels on. And so the way that I found it best to do is to take your handy-dandy ruler and measure about, well, I would say probably an inch from the top. So if we were doing it this way, we could take our ruler, measure about an inch from the top down there and make a little hole, or make a little mark. And then, if you need to, if you don't have a hole punch on hand, you can take a pencil, and it can even be a dull pencil, and you can just kind of push your way through there. But luckily for us, in this example, I'm going to use the hole punch just because it's faster for all of you at home. And the nice thing about the hole punch is you don't have to measure as much as long as you get it straight up from the top and push all the way down, because it's always going to be the same distance. Okay, and so we'll take this and we'll hole punch that. And then right there, you've got a little hole that's already started. You might have to make it a bit bigger when you push your pencil through, but that's a really good starting place. It's way easier than not having a hole at all. And so next up, what we're going to do is, now that we've got a hole here, we want to make sure that there's a hole like this on the exact opposite side. So if we were to turn it 180 degrees around, it would be a hole that looks exactly the same. And we can get very close to that by sticking our pencil through the hole that we've just made, making sure as close as you can that it goes straight through the center. It's not off or anything. And then start making a little mark right there. And that'll give you an idea of where you should either hole punch or push the next pencil through. You can even push it through with this pencil if that's what you're doing. But we're going mostly the hole punch route. So take that out of there. Make a note of where the mark is. Take the hole punch, look for the mark, and line it up. Once again, you want to make sure it's like straight through the center, one hole on one side, one hole on the other. Not off at all, if possible. It can be off a tiny bit, but the closer it is, the better the car will work. And voila, we've got hole on one side, hole on the other. And now what you need to do is that you need to make sure you do the same thing, not just on this side, but flip it around on this side. And what you're definitely going to want to make sure is that this hole lines up with whatever hole you put up there. And a good way to do this is to start with your handy dandy ruler again. Measure from try to line it up precisely with the bottom here and make sure it's even and straight all the way up, not going diagonal or curving, and line it up with the edge of the hole punch or the pencil or whatever mark you made. And then you want to make sure that you either make a mark up here, like an inch from the top or so, wherever you were doing it. Or if you've got a hole punch on hand, you can likely just go down here and do that. And if I just go, whoop, it's a little hard with one hand. Voila, have them line up like that. And then you're going to want to do the same thing on this side that you did to the bottom, whereas you stick your pencil in, you make your mark on the inside, and then you either hole punch it or push the pencil through all the way so it goes straight through the middle, just like the other side. And that will give us all we need to do through the body for right now. So then it's time to move on to making ourselves some wheels so that we can put something on here to make it roll. Okay, now and for our wheels, we're going to need to get out the cardboard that we're going to use to make it. So with this cardboard right here, we're going to need to find something round to use as the wheels, or something round to measure the shape and size. It's best if you measure all four wheels with the same thing so that you're very confident that they're at least similar. The more similar your wheels are, the better that this whole car will move. The better it'll roll, the better it'll perform, and the farther and faster it'll go. So I've decided to use this big honkin' piece of tape, put it right there, and I'm going to trace on the cardboard all the way around to make sure that I get a good size and shape for the wheel. There we go, I got a nice round wheel all the way around. If you ignore my little mess up initially, that's a nice, beautiful little circle. And then what you're just going to do is you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut it out as evenly and smoothly as possible. The more circular and round your wheel is, the better time your car is going to have rolling. The further and farther it'll go. So you'll just cut that out and be good to go. I'm not going to waste your time with that though. I've actually already pre-cut out 4 of them using that roll of tape from before. I don't want to make you guys wait while I cut. But now what I'm going to show you is how we can find the center of the circle, because we're going to want to make sure that the pencil axle goes as close to the center through as possible. Otherwise it'll roll weird. If we put it down here, it would roll like whoa, 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 and it wouldn't give us a very even ride. Just kind of, it would just kind of wobble all over the place. So for this, here's a handy trick to be able to find the center of a circle. We're going to make 2 lines on this circle to start out with. from one end of the circle to the other, and try to not make it through the middle. That's an important point. So if you can take right here, we've got from 0 to 4, one end of the circle to the other. We'll draw a line real quick. From 0 to 4, right there, and then we want to find the center of that. So in this case, that should be about 2 inches. And you want to make sure now that you draw a line going perpendicular from this line up. So that means kind of like making squares. If we were to cut this line in half and make rectangles and not, other funky shapes, just as straight to make as much of a right angle here as possible. Okay, so try to line that up and do that. And once again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer it is, the easier this will be. And now you need to find another part on this circle in a similar way. So let's try right here. It looks like from 0 to 3. So that means that our halfway point here is going to be 1.5, right there. Okay, and just like before, find a spot that gives it a nice right angle, perpendicular. And then up it goes. And where these 2 points meet is supposedly the center of the circle. And once again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer it is, the better it will work out in the end. So be sure to take your time and then mark where they meet up, and that should be about the center of your circle. You just need to do that to all 4 of them, and then you'll have some pretty nice centered circles. So with that, we now have our 4 wheels all cut out, all measured, and all with a hole right in the center. So as you can see, I ended up going through and doing the same thing with all 4 of them, making 2 off lines from the center, finding their midpoint and having them come up perpendicularly, and where they meet, that should be about the center. Now these lines, if they're lines that go through one end of the circle to the other, that's called a chord. That's just a fun little bit of trivia. So 2 chords, find the middle point of the chord, have it go perpendicular, where they meet, that's the center. But now that we've got that done, I think we've got all of the basic pieces saved for one to put the car together. So when I said that we needed straws earlier, that's because we're going to want, them on the pencil axle just a bit so that the pencil doesn't go back and forth too much. It'll keep it in place. And for pencils about this size, which either newly sharpened or unsharpened like I'm using, I think that around 2 inches of straw is probably good. So if you get like 4 2-inch length straw bits to put on the pencils, that's usually good for this, I've found. You can make them anything as long as there's still enough room on the axle, and as long as all of them are about the same size. And so I already pre-cut these out. Like I said, you should measure them to 2 inches or whatever you're going to use for it. And a little experimentation is okay if you're not sure right off the bat. But if you don't want to, 2 inches I think is good for what I'm doing. So let's put the pieces together. We've got our body right here, which I put holes in all of the sides like we did at the very beginning. Now we're going to slide our pencil axles right through. And you don't have to do this, but since I'm using unsharpened pencils, I like eraser side on this side, and then on the other side, eraser side, so it's kind of like diagonal from each other. It just looks nice to me. I like the symmetry of it. You got that right there. Now, the pencils are going to wiggle and wobble about as they do. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to slide all of our little axles onto the pencils. And this is both going to help keep the pencil in place when the wheel's on there and keep the wheel in place. But it's also going to help us estimate about where the middle of the pencil should be. Because as you can see, like right here, we've got that's about the same size as that, and you can measure it if you really want to, but that's not super important just as long as there's enough room on both sides. And so that's pretty good. It could also be like this, and we'd say, oh, well, the pencil's too far out this side, let's push it in a bit more. There we go. Okay, and now we'll do the next bit to the bottom. And if it'll go on there. Woo! Yeah, you might find that the pencils and the bits start sliding off before you've got the wheels on there. But there we go. We've got it set up. Now what we're going to do is, assuming that you've got the holes through your wheels, you can just slide them on there. And you can do it however you like, but personally, I like having the measurements on the outside. I think it's a pretty cool design, and then when they're spinning, you can really see how much the wheel is going. And I just think they look cool. And it takes a little bit of effort to get it on at first, but it's well worth it in the end. It looks like I need to make this one a little bit bigger. Still got my pencil on hand that I can use to poke through. Nice bigger hole, and now it fits on nicer, but still snug. Okay, voila, we've got the basic shape made with the pieces mostly in place. We're just missing the inside rubber band bit that's going to let us wind it up and make it go. And we might want to make this a bit sturdier. I think that's a good idea, and I'm going to do that. So what you should do is, if you've got glue on hand that works really great for this, you're going to want to find something to prop this up on and have it stay relatively nice and flat and normal. And then you are going to glue the wheels on as such. And you're just going to glue the pencil to the wheel about where it is, just on this one side, because we still want it to be able to roll. And you don't want to glue it to the axle at all. Or, I mean, you don't want to glue it to the straw at all. Doing that would keep the whole thing from rolling. You want the straw to be separate from the pencil, and then you want to glue the wheel part right here onto that. And so I'm going to do this side like I've already started gluing, prop it up, let it dry for a bit, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing, and then when we're done and we come back, it's going to be all dried and ready to go. And then we can start on the rubber band part and really finalize our car design and make it go. So now we wait for our wheels and axles to dry with the glue. While we're waiting, I will show you how we can chain rubber bands together. And this is important because we need our rubber band to stretch all the way from one end of the cardboard tube to the other, and maybe even a little further. And unless you've got some really heavy-duty rubber bands at home, you probably don't have any that long. Even these ones are pretty long, and they don't get anywhere close. So in order to do that, I'll show you how to chain them together. So starting with just these two, you'll want to get one in one hand, one in the other, have them come near each other, and then you want to grab one end of the rubber band through with the opposite hand, and then with another finger grab the opposite end, and then just pull them through each other. And as you get closer, 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 pull tight, and what do you know? You've now got one really long rubber band, and you can just keep doing that depending on how many rubber bands you need. If you just have small ones, you might need to do this a few times. If you've got ones as big as mine, this might be enough right here. So let's go back and let's see how the glue is doing on our car now. So now that the glue has dried on the wheels and the axles, and they all spin very nicely, it all rolls, we're ready to put the rubber band portion in. I will say, full disclosure, we did end up using hot glue on the sides of this, but that was because we needed the glue to dry fast enough so that we could get back to filming before the end of the day. For the original model, I used normal, just school glue, and that worked perfectly well, and the whole thing functioned fine. So you should be fine, but hot glue definitely dries faster, so if you've got an adult who can supervise you, and you need it done quicker, or you want it done quicker, it works very, very well. Otherwise, stick to school glue. Okay, so now we're going to put the rubber band portion in. Like I said before, we made a little rubber band chain. And you're going to want to make sure that it's about at least the length of the tube, which it clearly is right here, and that's good. We only needed to chain once because our rubber bands are so big, but you might have had to do it a few more times. So what we're going to do first is take the rubber band, slide it underneath, and we're going to tie it around this axle. So you're going to want to wrap it around there. If your hands are as big as mine, you probably can't reach the rubber band once it's over. So what you can do is just kind of put it over and then use a pencil or something else to drag it out with. Just like that. Okay, and when we've got this, the next step is to take this big end and wrap it through the small end and just pull it tight. And you're going to really, really want to make sure that you get down in there and make it as tight as possible. That's going to let this car go further and faster. So like that, we've tied it all tight. Got a little yo-yo car going right now. And now we're going to wrap it over again and kind of let it dangle out the bottom. Might take a little doing, but soon enough it should come out just like that. And now the final bit is the paper clip that I mentioned all the way at the start of this video. We're going to want to wrap the rubber band into the paper clip like this. And then we're going to want to put the paper clip and attach it right there. So kind of just like the way that you use a paper clip normally, just put it on the side of the tube car. And with this, now the rubber band is attached at this end and it's attached at this end. If you spin this axle enough, it's going to wind the rubber band up, because it's got nowhere else to go. When you're twisting and twisting and twisting, it's going to get caught. And this is what allows us to power it. We wind it up and let it go. So let's take this out into the field and give it a test, okay? Just wind it up. Wind it up a bit more. And... whoa! Wow. And with that, you should have yourself your very own fully functioning rubber band tube car. I hope that you had a ton of fun today trying to make this. I know that I did. It's a little bit more in-depth than some of the stuff that we've made on Maker Monday before, but I think it's well worth it for how cool it is and how much we got to learn and play around with when building it. So, on that note, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and take care. Tune in 2 weeks from now to see another cool craft that we're going to be making for Maker Monday. And stay tuned to the Independence Public Library Facebook page for even more cool stuff. All right. Take care, everybody.